Hello, Carol is here.
Meeting to order. Denise, can we have roll call, please?
Director Walper,
Here.
Director Martinez, Director Berman,
Here.
Director Johnston, Director Wheeler,
Yep.
Vice Chair Shibahara,
Here.
and Chair Rydell. Helena Snyder. Here. Jody Bever.
Here.
Melanie Wagner. Here. Lindsay Park. Ralph Branson. Carol Kaiser Worthy. I see her. And Kendra Perkins.
Excellent. So can we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Stand.
Ready, begin.
Well, thank you all for being here. I'm going to actually hand this over to Christina to run this budgeting session.
Thank you. I'm very excited for my first official Budget 101. I'm also very excited that it looks like we'll have a full budget committee this year, so very excited. Just a few housekeepings. If you are sharing a mic, make sure you move the mic towards you when it's your turn to speak. And Carol, if you have a question, if you could please raise your hand and then we will call upon you. Oh, okay. If there are no further questions, and since this is a budget workshop, you guys can ask questions at any point throughout my presentation. I really encourage you to. So I will go ahead and get started. Just a little bit. We have a lot of laws around our budgeting, and our laws are under ORS 294321. And under that, the main purposes of our budgeting laws, it establishes standard procedures. So all throughout Oregon, government, school districts, we all have the same procedures in our budget process. It defines programs and fiscal policies. It encourages citizen participation. It requires estimates of resources and expenditures and proposed taxes. And it gives us controls in our expenditures of public dollars. What is a budget? A budget is our financial plan for the fiscal period. And for us as Estacada School District, we go from July 1st to June 30th. The budget supports the strategic plan that is adopted by the board. It is an estimate of revenues and expenditures, and the budget gives us lawful appropriations, which gives us spending authority. There are 5 phases of our budget process. This year, we've requested budget at staff level. We do the proposed budget, approved budget, adopted budget, and then our live working budget, which is our day-to-day that we manage.
All right, I got a question for you.
Yep, and I'm locked up.
Requested budget at the staff level, and then what's the proposed budget?
Yep.
To me, that sounds like that would be the staff level.
The staffing level,
proposing.
yeah, great question. We first take a look at our staffing level, which is our FTE, pretty much is how we staff each building. FTE, our full-time equivalent,
Okay,
and that is how we staff all of our buildings and departments. So that is the majority of I reported to you each month, that is the majority of our expenditures is our staffing levels. So the proposed budget is what I'm going to bring to you next month, and that is going to be our plan, our idea of how we're going to spend for next year.
so do you take the requested budget from the staff and implement that into a proposed budget?
It's a piece of it, yes. So
Okay.
that is the majority. That's the first piece that we look at the staffing levels that we need for next year, and then we build our proposed budget on that.
And who builds the proposed budget?
gathered information from our departments and our buildings, and then I put it all together and working with the departments and buildings and other administrators.
Thank you.
So the proposed budget is our first step, and that's what I'm going to bring to the budget committee. The budget committee reviews, they hear from and I'll go through more. Let me go ahead and go through my slides because
Okay.
I'll go through more of them.
Thank you.
The phases of the proposed budget. So we develop a budget calendar, and that's what I shared with you the last month, and I'll share again quite often, is that's our plan of our process of our budget. Then we develop our budget goals or our priorities that we are looking at for this year, things that like adoption, curriculum adoption, things like that. Then we prepare the proposed budget. I have to publish public notices saying when we're having our official budget committee meeting. And then we hold budget committee meetings. So right now we have 3 scheduled starting next, I think it's May 13th. Yes, May 13th. So that's the budget process. So budgeting, we budget by fund. So we have different funds, which I will go for more information. We look at our resources, which is our revenues, and our requirements, which are expenses. They have to be balanced. So our revenues have to equal our expenditures per budget law. Estimates of resources and requirements must be made on a known information at one point in time. So when I start my process, I pick a date. So I'm using revenues from my last forecast from ODE, which was the end of February, and that is what I'm using to build my budget for revenues. And then I gather information. So today, I'm using that information, and if I get more information in June, I can't take that at that time. I have to take it from one point in time and use that information. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And this is what our budget looks like. You're going to look at 2 years ago actuals, last year's actuals, the current year working budget, and then we're going to fill out our proposed budget first. And once the budget committee approves it and recommends it to the board, we'll move it all the way up to adopted. So to project, the first thing we do is we look at our beginning balance for each fund. So our ending balance this year, what I'm projecting, what I'm going to end with, and that's what I'm going to start next year with. We look at revenues that are going to be added to the fund. We look at any transfers going in or out of the fund. And then we look at the expenditures that are going to happen within the fund. So the major resources or revenues that we look at as a school district is we look at our state school fund, which is the majority of our general fund. We also have our local revenue, which is our property taxes, our interest, and then we have ESD revenue that comes in. We get some fee revenue from our sports, our rent. And then we have some grant money, and sometimes we have other little miscellaneous money or donations. Expenditures or requirements. So we have a structure that we're required to use. So expenditures, the first different pots that we look at is instruction, which is our classroom teachers directly to our classroom. Our support services, such as transportation, my department, board, those kind of departments. Community services, facilities acquisitions, any major capital projects we do, such as turf project would be under that. And debt service is where we make our debt payments. And then the requirements are our transfers, our contingency, and if we budget an ending fund balance. So the major funds that we use as Estacada is our general fund, which is our main operating budget, our special revenue fund, and that's where we house all of our grants, our debt service funds, and that's the 300s, and that's where we pay our debt payments from, and our capital project funds, and that's the major projects such as the turf projects or any projects like that. Any questions so far? So within the expenditures, the part of the process of the board is to give us appropriation levels. And that's how, within each appropriation is how the district is allowed to expend. So our 1,000s are our instructions, our 2,000s are our sports services, 3,000s are community services, 4,000s are facilities acquisition, 5,000s are other uses, and 6,000s are contingencies, and 7,000s is an appropriated ending fund balance. Within each of those, we get to use objects or more kind of qualifiers or our directors, such as salaries, associated payroll cost, purchase services, and so they're identifying how we're spending our money within each of those appropriations.
Do hourlies get lumped in with salaried on the salaries?
Yes, so we have different classifications for each thing. So you're like hourly employees, is what you said?
Yeah.
Is that your question? Yes. It depends on, like a classified employee, they would be identified as 112. So it depends on their classification in that. So teachers are 111. Classified as 112, and then additional payroll, which is if we paid someone for some extra hours, that would be under 130.
That'd be overtime?
Yes, it could be overtime. Mhm. Josh? So I could give a little more examples about things while they're talking. So purchase services, under purchase services, we also have our sub costs there this year. That's where our utility costs go. Thank you. And that's also where our charter school payments are made from. Is it not working still? I don't think this is where I was. Oh, it is working. Okay. So publishing public notice, this is a requirement by under our statute. We're required to have a publication in a printing or a newspaper in general circulation, or mailing first class to each street address, or hand delivering to each street address. So it's very important I get that in the newspaper, because I do not wish to go and visit every member of Estacada. We have to publish not less than 5 days and not more than 30 days prior to the meeting. And for the first budget committee meeting, we have to publish at least twice. So just so you guys know, I sent that to the newspaper yesterday, so we are going to be legit this year. Phase 2 of the budget process. So this is what a budget committee, I'm sorry, I can't read my little notes there. This is what a budget committee is. The budget committee consists of the governing body, so the board, the full board, plus an equal number of appointed electors, which is the budget committee members. So all 14 of you are the board members, and all have the same rights, and all are voting on the approved budget. Their appointed members cannot be, the appointed members cannot be employees, agents, or officers of the district. They serve in a staggered 4-year term, and all members have the same authority. What the budget committee does, their duties. They receive the budget document, which will be handed out next month. They'll receive the superintendent's budget message. They'll review the proposed budget. They'll hear public questions and comments. They'll discuss and adjust the budget as determined by the majority. And they'll approve the budget and recommend it for adoption to the board. And they will also approve our proposed property tax rate. More duties. All meetings for the budget are open to the public. We have to allow public comment at least one meeting. The budget becomes a public document when released to the committee. So as soon as you guys receive it, I have to also send it out to as a public document, put it on our website, or allow for the public to come in and view it. A quorum, which is required to conduct business, hear testimony, and take action. A quorum is a majority of the public members. So with the 14, we would need at least 8 here for a quorum. Right, 8, yes. So at our very first meeting, which will be next month, we'll elect a new presiding officer. We'll receive the budget document. We'll hear the budget message, which will explain the budget document, describe financial policies of the district, and explain changes from the prior year. And we will also allow public comment. A majority of the committee must approve the motion to approve it. The budget committee approves the proposed budget as presented or as amended. Once approved, the budget committee's work is complete until the next budget cycle. Any questions on that one?
I more have a comment, and maybe this is the time. In years past, the budget committee has approved what is going to be the budget, but it's always been said that there could be some tweaks before it's actually adopted. And we've asked each year for that to be shared, and it hasn't been. Is there a way to make sure that that will happen, just so we know what's going on? And I think we've had someone different filling the budget each year. Okay.
Yeah, so last year was my first year here, and we did not make any changes from approved to adoption. But yeah, and you would also see that in our adopted, and I would be more than happy to send that all out once fully built, send out the electronic copy and to the budget committee. And I know it is. And I'm going to speak for Ryan, Superintendent Carpenter and myself. I know it is our goal to involve the budget committee throughout the year more often, and we're working on ways to do that. But at this point, this is by law the end of your duty. So anything else after that would be just by mine and Ryan and the board's wishes.
And I guess I could have been better at reaching out as well,
No,
but it had been a request
We
of
wanted to
everyone.
do that, yeah, and
So-
I think we have a person in place that's better suited to support that vision.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, but I agree. Anything, so at that point, when the budget committee, if they amend it before it goes to the board, you guys should be aware of what the finalized is. And I would be, again, happy to send you the beautified adopted budget once it's complete and built.
Awesome, thank
Yeah.
you.
I have a question. I guess I'm close enough to that. So the letter of the law is publishing it in the newspaper, and we do that at the city as well. However, we know that, people get information other ways nowadays and don't always, if like I would know, okay, this time of the year is kind of budget year, I should probably keep an eye on those public notices and then I'll see it. But do you use other ways to get it out to the public because you're so good about school districts sending out announcements and stuff? Or do you do extra things? Or is there ways that we can help? Say, hey, we're in the middle of the budget season. It's hard for somebody to just walk in, I think, without understanding the budget process and not not feel like, well, I don't have anything to contribute because I don't know what's going on. But I just kind of it'd be helpful for me to know also, what kind of things do you do to help get the word out that, hey, we're looking at the budget, we're setting this up for next year?
Great question. I know I could speak for myself. I would like to start planning the budget sooner, like adopting my calendar and putting those dates up on my website. And we're working to find ways for participation more. I mean, this year I added more work with our building principals and administrators in building the budget. So just keep growing that idea is what I'm thinking and making everything more visual. I'm working on a page on my website for our budget where I can add things that we're working on in that. Anything you want to add
No,
on that?
I think it's an area where we do have room for growth. As you know, Melanie, it's hard to get people excited about budget season. I do think we do our minimum legal requirements, but I think when it does come to social media and those things, I think we could improve our visibility and transparency in the process. And we're making small gains, like being on YouTube Live right now, and our YouTube channel has had vast success through the process, but we still struggle to find the right avenues to gather participation like we desire.
Same all around, I think. Yeah.
Again, I'm very excited. We're going to have a full budget committee this year, though. I hear that's the first time in a long time, and I'm taking full credit for it.
As you should. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Since this is my first time at this, can you identify who is on the budget committee and what their positions are?
Each budget committee member is of equal weights.
Right.
Next, at the first official budget committee meeting, you will appoint an officer, a budget committee officer, and a vice, what do you call, yeah, a vice, so the and vice chair.
Right.
So you guys will all, as board and budget committee, have a vote on that next time. But the 7 of you, and then I think you see the 6 names right there, and then Carol, who is on Zoom, will be our budget committee.
I
Okay.
think we have to vote.
And then,
here,
well,
don't
actually,
we?
yeah, you
So there's
have
some
4
that
of
are
them
already
tonight
on,
as a
right?
board. Yeah, 3 of the members are ongoing, and 4 of them will be on the agenda tonight for the board to decide to approve to our budget committee. So at this point, I don't have a full, but I'm hoping. Did that answer your question?
Partially.
What,
What are their positions? What do they do in real life?
in real life?
Like our jobs outside
Yeah.
of this.
I'd like to know a little bit about you folks, so I could understand, are you accountants? Are you homeowners,
Yeah.
We could do a little
parents?
introduction.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
And,
Yeah,
and
there's
also,
application forms.
yeah, and
that
there
they
is
had
the
to fill out.
applications attached to the board backup for the 4 new or the 4 that you're voting in tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you want us to do a little introduction?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Okay.
Go ahead, you can go first.
Okay. Okay. My name is Melanie Wagner. I have 4 children who have gone through one's still in the mix, but she's a freshman this year. The other 3 have graduated. I moved on, and I live in the area. I don't live inside city limits, but I live in the school district, and I work for the city. And I am year by year getting better at the budget. And that's why I ask, you want to pull people in and let the community know and let them be involved and have lots of eyes on it, but it's also very, you need, like you said, are you accountants? No, I'm not an accountant. But you need we need direction, which is what Christina gives us and the board gives us, to make sure that we're providing oversight. And I do understand that it's our job to set limits of spending. I think that's what we do. So we're not going to delve into all the minutia of the budget. That's what I think you guys do throughout the year. But as a budget committee of 14 people, we're providing oversight for how the budget is being set up, making sure all the rules are being followed, and then we set the limits of what can be expended. And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
You don't just work for
Oh,
the
yeah,
city. What do you do?
Oh, and I'm the new city manager, actually.
Which is-
By the way.
Which is
And
a
a new
big
grant.
deal. And
So I really need to get even more better at budget process and being able to explain the budget process, because it takes a while to learn it, I think, and then being able to talk about it in like terms that all of us as general people understand, I think is important. But we need the people with real expertise to put it together for us, and they know that they're doing that in full sight of what all of us are watching. So that's me. Who wants to go next? Jody.
I guess
Sorry,
it's
I got
me.
you guys down.
I'm Jody Bever, and we're small business owners. We own a couple of small businesses. I've got 4 children. One graduated from Clackamas High School, one's graduated from here, 2 are still in the district. And I do work with budgets on a regular basis and creating them and pricing and pulling everything in. But more, it's about making sure that the district's being responsible in how they're spending the funds. We're not diving into the math of it. It's, does this look responsible? Are we meeting the expectations of what the law requires, of what the district needs, what our families in the district need, what our teachers need? Are we doing that? Does it look like it's appropriate spending? And vote on it. So I think it's just important to get the voice of a lot of different demographics from within the district. And so I think that's what we bring.
I'm Helena Snyder, and I'm a private investigator. I own my own firm, so whenever a client brings me a case, they provide me a budget as well. So I have to abide by that at the same time. And I guess I also appreciate the fact that the district has a budget committee, so you're allowing community members to come in to provide the oversight, and not just, you know, the board looking over it and seeing what have you, and making the decision based off of that too. So I appreciate the fact that community members can be involved in that as well. But you guys answered all the other stuff, so thank you.
And I will say Lindsay Park is not here tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Is an accountant.
She is the
So
accountant,
she'll
that's
get
right.
you into the numbers.
So is Carol.
Yeah, and then, Carol.
Carol is as
wanted to-
well,
can
yes.
she do an introduction? I don't know if she can talk.
Hi, I am Carol, new this year. I do not currently have any children in the school district. We do live in the school district, but my husband and I are planning on adopting in the near future, so we will one day have children in the Estacada School District. I am an accountant by trade. I'm actually a forensic accountant, and in the past, I have been the director of finance for a couple of nonprofits, so budgets are near and dear to my heart. It will be hard for me not to get in the minutia, but I promise to abide by the general rule of them.
Well, welcome and thank you. I appreciate it, ladies.
Very nice. Thank you.
John, Ralph has been a member of the Budget Committee for many, many years. And I think he's formerly in education, so he's kind of got that side of things. And then Kendra's just a local.
Yeah, I think
he was.
Ralph was on the board at one point.
And I think he has a habit of being on city committees too, if that.
I was pulling documents for 1970s, and Ralph was listed in our board documents. Yep.
So Ralph's got a long history here. And then Kendra is just a community member that wanted to get involved a couple years back. So pretty good breadth of the community of representation.
Awesome.
So once the budget committee approves the document, the next step is to do some more publications. Publish notice once, not less than 5 days, not more than 30 days before the board hearing. So that will be our June board meeting. I have to, at that time, I have to include our ED1, ED2, or ED3 forms. We have to notify the time and place of hearing and location where budget may be reviewed in advance. The governing body, so once they, at the budget hearing, they will hold the hearing in June. They will hear testimony from any interested parties. They will consider the budget committee's work and the public comments, and then they'll deliberate.
That meaning the board.
The board, this is all, yes, the budget hearing is all the board. The governing body will adjust budget estimates or proposed taxes. They may increase expenditures within limits if expenditure of any fund is increased by more than 10% or greater. If expenditures of any fund are increased by 10% or greater, or the rate of amount of taxes is 10% or later, we have to republish the budget and hold another public hearing before adopting. And on that note, I just want to say, by Oregon law, we're required to have an adopted budget by June 30th, or we cannot do business as of July 1st. So just always have to say that.
So this is like when we get presented the proposed budget,
So this is
the approved
this is, yes, the approved budget.
approved budget, and then if we were to change it, then we have to republish and read.
If it's by more than
By more than
10%
10%.
or the proposed tax, yes. I'd
How
have,
often have we done that, do you know, in the last?
well, in my career, I've never done that. I don't know that Estacada has, but I can look back and see. Yeah. I have had some really close timelines, but not because of republishing, just because.
What if you have a capital expenditure? Something that comes up like the floor in the gym that we didn't anticipate? Do you have to go back and readjust that budget and get it approved, or?
So there is an option to do a supplemental budget. So the board can approve the budget as is, and then knowing that I would have to bring a supplemental budget. And we did do one already earlier this year, supplemental budget, because we had a higher ending fund balance, if the board remember that. So then I could bring it to a later board meeting, and I'd have to publicize, and we'd have to go through the numbers again. And I'd explain why we are preparing a supplemental budget. So it's pretty much another budget hearing. It's just we've already adopted one. We're just going to amend the current one because of a circumstance. Because remember, my document is based upon what I know at this time. So when I created this document, I did not know about the gym floor.
Right.
So that is not going to be in there. So more than likely, we will have to do a supplemental budget based
That'll
upon
have
that.
to be published?
Actually, this will not, honestly, because it's insurance.
Okay,
So we will be reimbursed from the majority of our expenditures.
okay, thanks.
Okay. Making sure I touched on all those. So I'm wanting to go into and dive in a little bit more about how we build the budget. So this is going to be a little more in the weeds of the budget. So estimating state school fund and other income. The state school fund, we use December numbers. So I took information I knew as December. So what I estimated property taxes, I estimated what our enrollment would be, I estimated how many special education students we would have, and that's all required for in December. And so that's what they use to give us numbers for this next year. Property taxes, we do that on a trend analysis. We use also information from the Clackamas County Assessor, which just came last week, which wasn't very helpful when I was already estimating revenues. We estimate federal aid based upon trend analysis and projections, tuition based upon current and expected contracts. And mostly other things are other trend analysis. We just take line by line and look at history and what we've done, and that's how we estimate what we're going to use going forward. So state school fund, ADM-R to ADM-W. So ADM-R is our student count. And so this is how the state gets us to our ADM-W. They look at different things, and I have them all listed. This is actually the numbers that are being used for 2022-23. So you could see there we're estimating to have 3,062 students, and then our ADM-W is 3,483 students. And you can see the little going down line by line, the different weights and all that. So a couple things I want to point. You see the 2021-22 next to it, and it's a lot lower. And the difference is because they include charter school in our first few numbers, our first few ADM-W counts. So this number right here is including Summit's numbers too. So that's how they're going to be paying us for next year, is off 3,483 students, or ADM-W, not students.
How much of that is charter school students and how much of that is just growth that we're receiving? Do you know?
Well, so as a district, you can see right there, we projected to go up a tiny bit. So currently in 2020-21, we have 1,692 students, and then as charter school, they have 3,062. And so as a district, it's probably, we're a little more than half of what the charter school has.
And we're, we've really kind of broken even. I think we're plus, you've got the enrollment reports. But what's different between our school and other school districts is we actually remain in the black, but we've really kind of broken even in terms of kids and families who have chosen to either go virtual or leave homeschool because of the pandemic versus the families who have moved in and are a part of it. So between that, it's kind of been a wash. But other school districts have lost hundreds of kids because they didn't have that growth infusion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to point out is our ADMR, it's not a point in time. It takes a lot of things. It takes how many days they go to school each month. And so when I'm showing numbers, like I'm showing right now, the district, us as Estacado, at the end of March have 1,760 students. So just things. And the charter school had 1,324. Oh, you can't see that. Can,
Is it on that computer?
Yeah, you need this.
Did that do it?
You went backwards.
Just wiggled my the little mouse.
Yeah.
Melanie's like a pro. Oh, we put it back there.
I think you can just click and drag
Carol?
Carol's face. Sorry, Carol.
I'm not very good with this. I don't know.
We're all focused on you, Carol.
Oh,
There you go.
There you go. Awesome.
There we go.
Okay, so this is, I think this is important. So this is what, again, stuff that we have to estimate in December for this current year. So we estimate our local revenue, what our property taxes are going to be. And we take, to do that, again, I looked at trend analysis and gave it a slight increase. We estimate what our common school fund's going to be. And then also another factor in our state school fund is our teaching experience. And you can see there as a district, we have 9.96 and the state average is 12.3.
Years of experience.
Yes, years of experience.
I've never heard of that adjustment. What is that?
And I'm going to
Thank you.
show you the full calculation of the state school fund next slide. So you'll see how that's a factor in it.
Question before we flip on the 6.8 million.
Yeah.
Is that a county-derived number?
No, that's my number that I took in December to estimate what we would be getting for next year.
And that's just based off of
Trend
trending
analysis.
in the local tax pool?
Yeah, and I can adjust that again this coming December, and then they'll adjust our payment.
Does that take into consideration any of the money coming in for new homes or just the new tax dollars coming in from those
This is property taxes.
property taxes? So like the SDC fees, the dollar per square foot, it's not taking any of that in?
That's we put that in our capital projects funds, our 400 fund.
Okay.
With the amount we get from the county and from the city for that.
And that's the money we're using to replace or put in a turf field.
Yep,
Awesome.
great question. Oh, can you move Carol again?
Melanie's tech support too. Budget committee member
Carol's
and
moving
tech
it more than
support.
any of us.
We need to, yeah, you're doing great.
So then another factor which we're well aware is our transportation grant. So you see here I'm projecting that we'll spend 1.7 million in transportation expenditures, and we get 70% of that reimbursed to us. So we're estimating 1,190,000 for the transportation grant. And again, this is talking about our ADMW. So the state has a hold harmless clause. So they look at our last 2 years, so our 2020-22 estimate and our 2020-22 actuals, and they give us the higher of the two. So that's the hold harmless. So we're estimating that 2022-23 will be higher. And then here is the fun formula for the state school fund. And I'm going to try to go at line by line. So the multiplier, teacher experience, so there's our negative 2.34 by 25. So 25 is a constant. That's always there. I can't tell you how that was derived, but that has been there since I've been doing the state school fund calculation. And then you add 4,500. Okay, that's been there also. That's a standard number, to the result of 4,441.5. Then you multiply that by the extended ADMW, and then you multiply that by the funding ratio. I will tell you the funding ratio changes. That's the only one there besides that changes, and it's a calculation, and I'll tell you a little bit as we work down how they do that. So then that means right there that we would get 32,300, that's what they're saying we need to operate, 32,343,968.89. Yes. And then they take our local revenue calculation, so the number I did for our property taxes, and they deduct that from it. So that's the whole thing where we say our property taxes is reduced from our state school fund. And then, so we are estimated for next year to get 26,399,000. So then you see the ADMW numbers right there. So the total formula that we get per ADMW is 9,627. So that little funding ratio, it changes to get us to that 9,627. Does that make sense? I don't know. I haven't seen how that funding ratio changes, but that's how the state school fund is calculated. And when I tell you there's a lot to it, there is.
Back up to go forward here. 32 million and change is if we just went straight school fund, no property taxes.
Right.
So then we deduct the 6.8 million and we get to the 26.
Yes.
But that 6.8 million then backfills back in because it's a separate fund coming in, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at our budget, it's going to be 32, 334, 343.
Yeah. Well, and that's just local, and yes, correct.
Okay. And then to further complicate it, if we actually had forest funds,
Yes.
that would also be a deduction that would get added
Yeah.
back in.
Mm-hmm.
So like the Southern Oregon schools have that to
Yep.
a lesser extent.
Yep.
Or to a greater extent, but lesser than it was years ago.
Exactly.
So then, in theory, if everybody had a high ratio of property taxes, say it bumped, then the state school fund would actually be greater. Are we getting into kicker world, or are we getting into the state school fund just gets bigger and so everybody gets sprinkled a little bit more?
Great question. If everyone's property taxes came in higher than the state school fund would be paying us less because they're still only going to pay us $9,627 per student.
Because these numbers are what they determine we need to follow.
Yes.
And so
Does that make sense?
So then that money just goes into the abyss and it goes somewhere else and funds bike lanes or something?
It gets spread. So that's what it's really complicated because this is just looking at us, but there's other factors. Every other school district impacts our state school fund. So,
We do believe, and this is going to come up in the board meeting, that then they make the May adjustment where it right-sizes the ship. And we believe because of our community growth, we have collected more property tax than we guessed we would. And so it's actually the opposite now, right? So the state has paid us more because we told them we were going to collect less. But since we've received more property tax, the state is ultimately going to say, you owe us because you collected more. And so we do plan on that impacting our projected end fund balance for last year's budget.
yeah, that just came in.
Would it actually affect it or just money coming in and going out in different ways?
It
It
will
should be a
be.
wash, right?
No.
Well, it's a wash at the end of the day, but currently, we are in possession of more money than we're supposed to have. And so we'll have to reconcile that.
Okay. I see.
Yeah, because we received it last year, we accounted for it, we got audited for it, so now they're going to adjust it in this year's.
It's not money that we've spent, though, it's just hanging out.
Correct.
Yes. Yep.
Are we collecting interest on it?
And yes, sir.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
sir.
we are.
Not much, though.
Yeah, exactly.
At least we get something out of it.
Yep. It does live in our bank account, which is
So
growing
I
interest.
hope this
Yep.
gave you a little bit more idea on our state school fund, because this is, again, our biggest revenue. Okay, so how the budget is built. Step 2, we look at our mandatory or our fixed spending, such as our contracted salaries, which again is negotiated, our substitute costs, which we budget under our purchase services, our contracted health benefits, which is negotiated, our utilities, we try to determine what the rating of increase is on that. We also have a mandated special education spending, so we're required by law to spend the same or more every year on special education spending, so we have to determine that. We also look at our mandated professional services, such as our lawyer costs, our auditors, our architects, and then our transportation costs, our supplies. And then we determine where our money's going to go. Our first thing we're going to do is pay our salaries and our benefits to our employees. We have to pay our debt. We have to pay our professional services. We have to pay our charter school because we're just passing the money through to them. That's part of that state school fund money is there, so we have to pay them. We have to, of course, pay our utilities. And then repairs and maintenance, transportation costs, we need to pay our fuel and our equipment, and then supplies. We have to identify what is variable, like what can we be flexible on, and in doing that, we look at our trend analysis to look at our current costs and our past history, and then we work with the superintendent, principals, and district administrative to look at what our needs are for the next years, and there's just some ideas of things that we review when we're looking at that. So here's a good chart. So the fixed and the state mandated spending is quite big. That is locked in. We have to pay those. And our variable cost is very little. So just to give you an idea. So for variable costs, things that we can look at are textbooks, staff professional development, general supplies, unexpected state mandates. Yes, that happens. And possible improvements to programs, infrastructure, and facilities. And then calculation of tax levy. We have limitations and laws on this. We have to, and limitations on increased and assessed value. Our fixed minimum tax rate is $100,000 assessed value by law. So we're really regulated by that. Can't collect more than we're going to pay, pretty much is what they're saying. How the budget is built, we look at our revenues and resources, and we subtract our proposed expenditures and appropriations, and that's balance. That should be 0. Revenues minus expenditures should be 0. And just a little bit, because you will be seeing these a lot in our budget document. We have, Oregon requires us, they have a chart of accounts, and we have to follow it. The first thing we look at is our fund, which I kind of went through, which is our general fund, our special revenue fund, our debt service, and our capital projects, and then our function, which I went through. Our objects, and then I haven't talked about location. You'll see location in there, and that identifies the schools or the departments, and then the area, which identifies the curriculum areas such as band, music, math, and then sub area. You will sometimes see that, and that's how we identify. That's just for us. We get to identify certain things, such as. Right now, we have one for gyms, so we can identify all the emergency costs that are coming in for the gym. So just summarizing, this is the budget in the nutshell. The budget is a financial management tool. It's created over a series of months through collaboration of many. I didn't just start this last week. It's created in a snapshot of time with agreed upon assumptions. It's created based on availability of resources and expenditures. We try to align them with the adopted board strategic plan. And we have to stay within our appropriations and must conform with Oregon budget law. So our next meeting is May 12th at 5:30. And then if necessary, we'll see you again May 19th at 7 o'clock. And hopefully not, but if necessary, May 26th at 7 o'clock. Is there any questions or any follow-through?
Will we have a copy of the proposed budget ahead of the May 12th meeting, or will that be when it's given to us?
At this point, it will be May 12th. That will be my goal for next year. And my goal, I just talked to Superintendent Carpenter. I would like to get that out a week in advance. I'd have to make sure that you all received it at the same time as well as the public. So I have to pre-plan that. So that's what I'm going to work on that next year. Mhm. But you will all receive it on May 12th. Okay, no other questions. I'll hand it back to Vice Chair Shepherd.
Thank you, Christina. Well, man, I learned something new.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great
I really
presentation.
appreciate that 101. I needed that, and I'm
Yeah.
blown away at how complex it is. But anybody else have any other meetings? Or meetings? Yes, we have lots of meetings. Questions? Any other questions? No? All right, budget meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Hi.